So you followed all the steps in my last video, but your bike still sounds like this. In this video, we're going to be checking out other areas where the creak may be coming from. And let me preface this advice by saying some of the areas that we'll be checking will require some special tooling. So if you're not 100% comfortable taking your bike apart, it's better to be safe than sorry and take it to your local bike shop. That being said, let's jump right into it. Last video, we checked 5 common areas for creaks besides the bottom bracket. Well, guess what? In this video, the bottom bracket is actually the first thing that we're going to check. Usually creaks from this area are either from worn bearings causing some play, or the more likely scenario is that the interface between the cups and the frame are either contaminated or the grease has simply washed out. So checking the bearings is simple. Just remove the crank and give it a spin with your fingers. If the bearings feel loose or crunchy, it's time to replace the bottom bracket anyway. If the bearings feel smooth, now is a good time to remove the cups and reinstall them. If you're lucky enough to have a BSA threaded bottom bracket, this process is extremely straightforward, as you simply remove the cups using a tool such as this. Just make sure to clean the threads and use some good waterproof grease before threading it back on and torquing it down. For those with press-fit bottom brackets, you'll need to punch out the cups with a special tool such as this and a mallet. If your press-fit bottom bracket is older than a year anyway, consider investing in one of these threaded conversion kits. These work by pressing in the cup on one side, but the other side is actually thread in, keeping the cups nice and tight together. In the last video, we checked the rear cassette to eliminate a ticking noise under power. If that didn't fix your problem, check the spokes to see if any of them are loose. And believe it or not, sometimes this cross section where the spokes touch each other can make some noise if they're contaminated. So give them a quick wipe down using a vinegar and water solution, and maybe even a little drop of chain oil to keep it nice and quiet. Believe it or not, sometimes cable movement can cause creak-like noises. If you have a full suspension bike with external cable routing, a simple movement of the cables as your suspension compresses can make noises, especially around these areas here. A shot of silicone spray or even a drop of chain lube can be all that's needed to make it quiet again. Now let's move on to the elephant in the room, which is the suspension pivots. With so many parts on a full suspension bike, it's not uncommon to have one or more of the pivots make noise over time. But before taking the entire bike apart, the first thing I recommend is to jump on an owner's forum such as those on MTB or Pink Bike, as these information sources can be invaluable in identifying some common areas from creaks from other owners. For instance, many Santa Cruz VPP models, such as this 5010, require periodic maintenance on the lower link to keep it quiet due to its close proximity to mud and water. And in this case, a simple removal, regreasing, and torque is all that's needed to make it quiet again. And if you're up for it, remove all the collet bolts, give them a good amount of grease, and perhaps more important of all, torque them down according to the manufacturer's specs. That's a really good way to eliminate any noise from the suspension. And finally, you're not going to want to hear this, but sometimes the noises can come from a part on the bike that you can't fix yourself. For instance, I've seen plenty of creaks coming from inside the saddle itself, specifically where the rails are inserted into the seat. And what may sound like a creaky headset could be coming from your suspension fork. I've recently had a Fox fork exhibit a really nasty noise on the CSU, or crown steer unit, which is the area where the steer tube is pressed into the fork uppers of the factory. You can check this yourself by sitting on your bike and bumping it gently against the wall. If it makes a cracking noise and you're 100% sure it's not your headset, then chances are you have a defective fork as well. Unfortunately, this isn't something you can fix yourself, and you'll have to send it back to the manufacturer. And finally, if you're really unlucky, sometimes a cracked frame will make creaking noises as well. So give your bike a good wash and inspect it thoroughly for any signs of cracks, especially around high tension areas like the head tube and seat tube. So there you have it, even more places to check for creaks on your mountain bike. Hopefully you're able to use this video to narrow down that dreaded noise and keep your sanity on the trail. Hope you enjoyed this video, and remember, those trails don't get easier, you get better. We'll see you on the next one.